Hello and welcome to another edition of Conversations with Mrs. R. And now this is a different one because we've been doing the marriage series for a couple of months. And this set of series I will call the coffee table series, and you will understand why. I will say what we're doing today after I have introduced, of course, Mrs. R. It's great to have you. Now, this is very cozy because I have you all to myself today.
Yeah,
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
yeah.
The conversation is different today because we're going to be talking about your books. Now, one of the amazing things that you may know or not know about Mrs. R is that she is a writer, a creative through and through. And that I can say that because I'm someone that loves to read. I love anything creative gets my attention, and so it's a pleasure when I can, just pick the mind of someone who is truly a creative, and that is what reading your books, by the way, books has been. We can do a whole series on your books and your poetry, Mrs. R. First of all, before we even delve into that, this streak of writing, when did you know that you could do it?
That's an interesting one. I think it would date back to my secondary school because I loved literature.
Okay.
I just would read a book and wonder what was in the author's mind. And I remember one of our teachers saying literature is an expression of your society, which means what I understood it to mean was at every point in time or season where a writer, whether it was in the 10th century or 21st century, the person is reflecting the culture that they've been positioned in at that time. So that intrigued me. And so I did literature for A levels. And
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Which is not easy, by the way. By the way, yeah. And so that was
I think
where.
that's where I discovered that I like writing because I could transport myself into the books I read. Yeah.
Well, it's obvious. So today we're good. Let me now go to what we're talking about. So we're going to have a series of this coffee table series where we talk about some of the books and the poetry from Mrs. R. This is another aspect of who she is and what she believes in. And today will be talking about the book Shining Statues. It says, "Take a stand and shine for God." Now, the first thing is that is amazing about this book is that it was written over a decade ago, but
Interesting. Yeah.
it reads like it was written for today.
Yeah.
That for me is first of all the power of words and the power of storytelling that goes beyond the now. Did you think when you were writing this book over a decade ago that you'll be talking about it today?
You know, it's interesting because I had this divine inspiration at the time I wrote the books, and the experiences were so very fresh on my mind. So I wrote. But I couldn't find the energy to market the books at the time because there was so much one had to grapple with. There was so much going on in life, ministry, personal, family. There was just a lot, and some of it quite distracting. But I then said to myself, settle into it. God gave you the inspiration and you've written the book. When it is needed, when it is relevant, you would have the necessary energy to release the book and to promote it.
Promote it.
And I think there couldn't have been a better time
couldn't have
than
been.
now for this book.
Now, for people who say, "Oh, Marian, I don't read. It's so stressful." There's some things you should know about this book. The language, the simplicity of the language, first of all, is one of the strengths of the book. The poetry is breathtaking because it shows a vulnerability from you that it's almost like you're sharing yourself. So that is the first attraction. But let's go to one of the principles of the book that is relevant today, the principle of differentiation.
Yeah.
The principle of saying, this is the road I want to walk
Yeah.
in and stick with it. Now, Mrs. R, in the society where we're in, where conformity is the watchword, it's almost like if everybody's going this way and you attempt to branch off, you are fighting against the tide.
Yeah.
it's difficult.
Yeah.
Difficult not to be like everybody else.
Yeah.
How do you do this?
I think it's probably in the book as well. I use the term differentiate or die.
Yes.
So, first of all, it may seem difficult, but I actually think that living your authentic self gives you more peace. I think part of the challenge in today's world that disrupts our peace and brings a lot of disharmony is trying to be everybody but yourself. I mean, I'll give you an example. I've tried so hard to be happy with wigs. At some point, I had 5 of them, and they were given to me by lovely ladies who I'd see somebody's wig like yours, and I was, oh,
so
lovely.
beautiful.
And they'd buy me this wig as a gift, and I just wouldn't be able to wear it. Every time I put it on, I feel I'm somebody else. So it gave me more peace of mind to come to terms with my authentic self and grow my hair. And it would interest you to know that this is my hair.
Oh, your hair! Amazing.
There you go. So take it to more serious matters. I wrote, when I saw the inspiration for this book came from the Mandela Square.
Yeah.
When I saw the statue of Nelson Mandela, that's where I derived the term, the name, or the topic for the book, Shining Statues. Because his statues spoke of differentiation for me. This is a man who differentiated himself at all cost. It cost him literally his life.
Yeah.
But it's painful, but it stands for posterity. So when I looked at the Mandela statue, I thought to myself, at least Mandela can say he was his authentic self. And in standing firm, defied all odds and changed the trajectory and the history of mankind as relates not only to South Africa.
Yeah, for the world.
For the world.
Yes.
For the world. And then if you bring it to today's society, I learned growing up, we were 6 girls, and my father instilled in us the fact that we were all to be different. You were not supposed to be like your sister number 2 or sister number 3. And in that individuality would be the strengths. But in Christ, you take your individuality and you pass it through the fruit of the Spirit. So you're not supposed to be arrogant with it. You're not supposed to be pompous. You're not supposed to be obnoxious. But you can be yourself and accommodate other people without the people changing you. Yeah. And that speaks, when we talk about being different, I'm speaking really of principles and virtues and values. Yeah.
Now, I like one of the illustrations you used in the book of the conductor and the fact that his back is to the audience. So he's so in tune to what he's doing. And the applause, the sounds, whatever, the emotions from the audience, he's not aware because he's deliberately not faced. And I like the fact that it was an experience you shared with your son. You know, when you were trying to talk to your son, which is another thing I love about this book, that everything that you try to portray, try to share, it comes from a place of experience, from something that has happened to you, happened to somebody around you, and it's a lesson learned. And for me, it means it happened, so I can do it.
Yeah.
So give a bit more light into that illustration of the conductor backing the noise and the distraction. How can it be relevant for me today with so much, especially on social media, saying this is the level of success. This is when I've done right. This is when I have done enough.
Yeah. And I'm thankful that the book would be relevant, particularly now because of social media, because children, young people, adults, it never ends. Whether you're in ministry or you're a banker or you're a teacher or you're a medical practitioner or a business person, in the environment we live in, it's difficult to have that culture of being standing out as a person different in values. But I think part of it is to start when when people are young, as I pointed out about family. I may not always get it right, but in me are certain boundaries that say this is really your parameter of operation. So when you don't have those boundaries defined early enough, then life can take you by surprise. But when you have the boundaries defined, when you find yourself in a situation, you have a guide, to follow. I sometimes use this example that when God the Father gave the 10 Commandments as laws, he knew that the Israelites wouldn't be able to keep them. But you've got to have a rudder that brings you back to put you in shape with life. Now, take it to raising children. Let me start from there. I think it's important in today's world to set the boundaries early enough when a child is growing up. So the boundary could be something as small as you see the decorations here, and a little 2-year-old is going for that.
Stop it.
Stop it. So we don't wait to set boundaries with very important matters.
Okay.
That child is learning from early that mommy is saying, that's not a toy. It's a decoration. That's a boundary.
Yeah.
You're instilling a value. You put a value on the decorations on the table, and you're saying to that child, there are parameters for operations. You don't have to go there. Those are boundaries that later on help you moderate life. I don't know if I've answered your question, but you can.
I like the fact that we've segued into boundaries.
I know what you said to me also in addition. So going back to the choir.
Yes.
Good. So I gave my son the example of the choir because he could identify with that. So the conductor who's facing the choir must turn his back to distractions.
Yes.
So I liken life to the choir. In the choir, there are different people, different artists that play different instruments. So the choir master, to be efficient and effective, has got to concentrate on them, not the crowd watching. Imagine if the choir master or the conductor turned around and faced the audience. The choristers wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So that's how life is. But it requires a strength, which as Christians, God gives us, if we ask, as regular people, upbringing, or people who may not have access to the Bible, and some people who actually have access to the Bible may not see that they can draw strength. So the strength comes from, I would say, first knowing who you are in God, and then he gives you the grace. And that has really helped me in the different seasons of life. Yeah.
Now, we're going to get to the seasons of life because that's another thing you talk about. But there's a line you talked about, our desire to get validation from men. So that desire, it's not something that we can ever achieve. And you point that out a lot from even a choice of a mate, a choice of a partner. But it is something that we experience every day. We do love the validation from men. We do love the applause and the well done. And I think circling back even to social media, we do like the normal likes. Oh, you post something.
I know.
Ooh, 20 likes, 1,000 likes. And it makes your day. You smile because even strangers are validating you.
Yeah.
How do we pull ourselves from the constant need for validation from men?
I think you have to, discipline comes in. It may interest you to know that I don't check my Instagram page of conversations with Mrs. R. I mean, I can glance at it. I mean, Trish, the lady in my office, she shows me what, I get to see before she posts. but it's discipline. And I like to keep saying you can acquire it along the way, but it has to be, but it's valuable when it's instilled in you very early. So I
Early.
want to really seize the opportunity to say that to parents.
Mm.
So I don't check my Instagram page because it's addictive.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong.
Wrong with
Please,
it.
there's nothing
If you can
wrong if
control.
you can control it. But I've come to realize that my senses are quite heightened. If I go to bed and what I watch on CNN is war in Iran or war in Russia, that's what I'm going to dream about.
Yeah.
So it shows you how addictive these social media platforms can be. So Miriam, I can't overemphasize the fact that it's a decision,
Okay.
there's discipline, and then where we need help, we can have accountability partners.
Okay.
Please, I'm getting addicted to this, or I'm spending too much time. It's the same way that you don't sit down and eat all you want to eat at home. You don't sit down and consume all the chocolates, even if you like sweet things,
Sweet
because
things.
that's bad for your health.
Yeah.
So man is spirit, soul, and body. It's the same way I nurture my spirit. I've got to create a balance to nurture my body. And I've got to create the same balance to nurture my soul.
So
And what I have been able to do is also to ask God for strength to be able to function in the way that is a healthy demand
Man.
on your person and on your assignment.
And getting, so when you, and also I guess that's why the centrality of knowing what the maker wants of you helps the validation part, because
Yes.
sometimes it doesn't mean you're not doing the right thing if everybody doesn't seem to cheer for you.
Yeah.
And then down the line, you now realize the decisions were. But the early stages, it seemed like you're walking against the tide, and everybody telling
Yes.
you that it's not going to
Yes.
work.
Yeah.
What happened to you? You used to be like this. You know, sometimes people pull
Yeah.
you to your old dreams,
Yeah.
tell you that you used to be this high, now you're here, go back. But you know that there's more. But you just have to pass that stage.
I know,
So
I
you
get you.
have to. It's something that I got from there.
Yeah.
And honestly, at the center of it all, we do not hide the fact that we are creatives like our maker, and the essence of who we are is connected to God. I really don't understand. I don't know how it can be anything else, because the noise of the present age is so much
Yeah.
that there are days that even when you try to put on the joy, when you open the door, the depression is just waiting
Yeah.
to hang on to your shoulder. And so you need a bit more to push through, which brings me to where you talk about the wilderness experience. And there's something to be learned. Nobody wants, first of all, we don't want to be in the wilderness experience. That lesson, Mrs. R, we don't want to learn it. But you are so firm about the fact that when there's a wilderness experience, there's a lesson to be learned.
Yeah.
How do I learn it?
Let me touch on something before I get to the wilderness. Something that is important in our communities today. Learning to be different. I want to touch on materialism. A lot of, when you talk to people now, a lot of it, maybe with the inflation, with the economy, the harshness in our economy now, people are a bit more restrained. But the average person here thinks of what car I'm going to drive, what home
I'm going to live.
going
What
to live
area?
yes, area. And I mentioned that here. So people, you get a contract and you get millions of naira, 10 million, 100 million, which is not much value now.
Yep.
So the first thing we would think of is how to move from one neighborhood to the
To
other.
the other.
The next thing
Change
is
our car.
change my car. The next thing is the children have to go to school in a different area. But that one contract It's just a lift.
Elect. Yeah.
How are you going to sustain the lifestyle
it.
we are not thinking of? So I make all these changes overnight based on a
That
contract,
yes.
one contract. And 3 years down the line, I'm stranded. Wouldn't it have been wiser? And then people get into a panic. And then you want to make money at all costs.
To maintain that level you pushed yourself to.
Yes. That level you jumped into. It's like you were on the ground floor and you took a lift and you found yourself on the 11th floor. But that's not really where you ought to be at that time. And this increasingly is happening to young people. So then you begin to run helter-skelter. You double your workload. You triple your workload to the disadvantage of your health.
And to even the family you want to supposedly give the good life to. Because you don't even have time.
And the children are not, that's not what they need.
At the time, yes.
It's okay, you want to pay school fees, but they were in a good school in Nigeria. You were compelled, probably for many reasons, to send them abroad. And then they are stranded. Sometimes I blame the fact that our country could function or is not functioning as the way we grew up. We went to schools in Nigeria. The missionaries, there were schools people could afford. But I believe that we need to moderate life for the longer term. So, and that's in my book. What are the adjustments you can make? Because every pattern we live is what our children will adopt. So you find 40-year-olds with hypertension. And
tell me about it.
Where and people are falling sick. So I would like to touch on that, and my advice would be that we need to moderate our lifestyles. We need to create a work-life balance for the benefit of our children. To what intent or profit would it be for parents to be sick or even pass on younger than they should, and leave children wondering what to do?
Okay, there's quite a lot.
Back to the question.
Yes, and I think we're going to take a break here because we're going to talk about the wilderness experience. We're going to talk about the poetry in this book. We're going to talk about dolls, and that's my best part of this book. But because it's a series, like I said, so we're going to end this particular series on this note. But join us for the very next one, because Shining Statues has so much. Remember, the language is simple. It's an experience. So please try and get this book. Because look, I have notes with every chapter. I don't even want to show Mrs. R my book because the biro marks on this book, you would think it was a textbook, but it's that interesting. We're going to take a break on this first edition of the Shining Statues series. When we come back, we're still going to be talking about lessons learned from this book and how practical it can be for your day-to-day living, especially for the younger folks. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Mrs. R, and I can't wait for the next session on Shining Statues.